Tilek, welcome to this conversation for Open-Ended. As a reminder, Open-Ended is a platform for activist designers and thinkers from around the world. Together, we're exploring spaces where creativity, culture, and design intersect with tech, science, and engineering, with a lens on challenging existing structures and entrenched narratives. We welcome everybody to join in as we bring a global, truly diverse community of creators together through this initiative for design thinking and looking to the future. So I'm going to introduce Tilek. So Tilek Mamutov is the CEO and co-founder of Outtalent, a career accelerator that helps engineers from emerging markets get jobs at top technology companies abroad. He's based in San Francisco, and he grew up in Bishkek, and he's lived all over the world, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. I know Tilek very, very well because he and I worked together at Google, where he was for 11 years. Most recently, he was at Google X and driving the insanely cool initiative called Project Loon, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, building stratospheric balloons that provide internet in remote areas in emerging markets around the world. He also led a machine learning business while he was at Google X, and he has before that worked across some seriously cool and exciting initiatives while he was based around the world in product and emerging markets during his time at Google. So Tilek, welcome to this conversation for Open-Ended, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Suhair. Really, really excited to join, and I'm very confident this is going to be a big, very big, famous thing. So I'm proud to be one of the early people to be invited.
Well, thank you. It means a lot that you have agreed to share your time. And obviously, you're so far away. You're in San Francisco. I'm exactly 12 hours apart. And the world feels so big right now. And it feels very special to get this time with you. So thank you. Okay, so I want to start off, Tilek, before we get to your work, is just if you can share a little bit about yourself. You grew up in Central Asia. You've had a very unusual career trajectory, one which I think you have thought through a lot, because we know what you're working on right now really comes back to your own journey in tech and professionally. So can you tell us a little bit about, sort of your journey out of Bishkek, how you ended up joining Google, what you studied, what your motivations were, and a little bit of how you got to this particular point in a nutshell.
Great. Yeah, I'll try to be quick. I can talk about it for hours probably. But yes, I think I'll start that. I was born in Kyrgyzstan, in a capital called Bishkek. So I'll talk a little bit about it because I think many of the viewers and listeners may not know about it. So it's a small country, 6 million people. The area around the size of a UK, which was a part of a Soviet Union. And we have this traditional nomadic culture, which is a little bit similar to Mongols. Language is more similar to Turkish language, and predominantly Muslim. And we speak our own language, Kyrgyz, and we also speak Russian because we were part of Soviet Union. And we became independent in 1991, just celebrated 29th year of independence. And yeah, I grew up there. I think had a fortunate childhood. I think our family was kind of like a middle class, and it kept improving because my father was an entrepreneur. After the Soviet Union collapsed, he was looking for like new ways to apply his engineering, like construction engineering skills, and he started a company while my mom became translator. She was an architect before, actually, but architecture was not very much in demand immediately after the collapse of the union. So she kind of changed to English, which was very much in demand, as you can imagine, now that the world was opening up for Kyrgyzstan. And from the beginning, I fell in love with math and later computer science. So I knew that's what I wanted to do. So that's where I got super lucky, right? I was born at a time where it's extremely useful to like those things and to have those skills, and chose to pursue computer science. And I didn't think about applying for colleges abroad because I didn't know many people who did. So I just thought, well, apply to the best colleges in Kyrgyzstan. Managed to get in into American University in Central Asia, which is, I think, a very interesting thing because it combines the Soviet Union education, the best parts of it, with a lot of the best parts of American and Western education. I generally think there's a lot of great parts there. It was back home in Bishkek. And it was a very new university, started by a woman, actually, which I respect deeply. She could have her own podcast and a story. Yeah, so very proud of the college I went through. So since I joined college, the story is pretty usual until I one day got an email from a Google recruiter saying that, asking whether I would be interested in joining. I was so surprised at the time. I thought it was a scam. My mom was sure it was a scam.
And you were studying mathematics.
I was studying computer science in college, and I finished college. And at the time, my self-confidence was pretty low because my grades were quite low. My GPA, like grade point average, was 2.9 out of 4. So while as a kid I was really ambitious, like because of getting like these bad grades, my ambitions kind of really went down by a lot. And I wasn't applying for any jobs abroad because I thought I was just not good enough. And I sometimes wasn't able to even get a job in Kyrgyzstan for various reasons. And I was just having like random freelance contracts. Nothing against freelance, but the whole career wasn't very intentional at the time. So that's when this Google email came through.
When I got my email from Google was also from a recruiter, and it was the one time that I remember not being able to have the plan to know what was next. And I didn't expect the same story. Like it just came out of the blue, and the same thing. I just wondered, is this for real? And is this what I want? And I wasn't even studying computer science. I feel like there's something about, it's not just Google, right? An opportunity that shows up that you didn't expect, that you don't realize how hard you work towards, but that's only in hindsight, and it feels like complete serendipity, right?
Exactly. I was analyzing that moment a lot because I think, again, once I joined Google, the career was more or less predictable, except the moment where you stepped in. But before Google, again, I wasn't planning that at all. But I think what I was doing, which was good, I was following my passions. Again, people heard that a lot, but I'm going to say it again. So, for example, 2 passions, which were not, I was not following them because of, I thought this is good for career. I was following them literally because I was enjoying it. One was Italian language. Everyone was studying German and French because there were, or Spanish, because there were a lot of international exchange programs, scholarship programs. Italian didn't have many programs, but I just loved it. I loved the culture. I loved the language itself. And I was just really into it. And that's one of the things that led me to actually a scholarship in Italy. So I studied in Italy for a while, which was actually one of my dreams that came true. I studied in Perugia. It was called Università per Stranieri. And that was the first dream that came true, actually. And it's something, again, I didn't have it as a clear goal. It's like, I definitely want to be in Italy. It was just something just so wonderful that was just in the back of my mind. And I was just like doing steps in the meantime, just because I was enjoying it. I remember missing software engineering classes to go to Italian classes, even though I wasn't getting any credit or grade for Italian classes. I was just enjoying it so much. And that's one thing that actually a recruiter told me that was very interesting in my resume. Is Italian language was unusual. I also learned Japanese. I knew Japanese at the time a little bit. And I started teaching. And I started teaching, again, purely from very pure intentions. I didn't think it was good for career. The salary was ridiculous. It was like $20 a month. It was not enough for public transportation.
And what were you teaching? Computer science?
So I started actually with more art-related subject, which was
Really?
more, yeah, in a way. It wasn't art, but it was animations. I forgot what it's called. Basically, it was animations with what's called Flash. So you basically
Mm.
can. So the first homework was like create a like advertisement banner, and then second one was like a website. Third one was like a cartoon. So at the end, people just create their own cartoons, and I thought it was like the best thing ever because all other classes I consider a lot of other classes I consider quite boring because sometimes you're just told to like make a calculator. It's like, why would you make a calculator? Like there are already many calculators. And what I was excited about is I could teach people to use software engineering and like these tools to create cartoons. And again, it's something I was doing just because like I just wanted it to happen, right? I was not doing it to like improve my resume. And in the end, that's what actually happened. That's what helped with the resume as well, because I became like one of the maybe the youngest teacher, like professor in that college, even though the pay was low. But that was not the goal again. Like looking back, there are a bunch of things that helped me to get noticed by Google, but a lot of those things were most of those things were unplanned.
Well, there's also something really amazing about the purity of your intention, is doing it because it means something to you. And of course, I think on the one hand, we think, oh, you have to be very privileged to be able to do things that make you very happy and fulfilled. But actually, I think this does show that you can be at any stage of your career at a loose end, and you never know, looking back, how something that you did might come back to you in whatever way. And I wonder how many companies now are much more similar to Google in their recruiting, where they're looking so much more beyond, a lot of people have a great CV, but what are you bringing that's actually showing a little bit more about who you are and what you care about? Even when you're so young, you're not even sure about how you define it, right? You're just doing it because it makes you happy
Yeah,
in some way.
exactly. It was not a very well planned career. I just started doing a bunch of things which I which I was enjoying and which where I was feeling progress. And somehow in the end, it started helping later down the line.
And so then in terms of your work with languages, Italian, Japanese, do you think that in some way that idea, I mean, you studied coding, is that sort of a similar thing? And is that translated into your work into the future at
Um,
all?
so I don't think there was a big correlation for me between studying human languages and like programming languages. I think for some people there is, after talking to some engineers. But for me, yeah, I was just fascinated by languages, just etymology of words, and just cultures, like what different cultures. I love traveling and just going to very unusual places, and just learning about people's culture. So I think, yeah, language for me was like one of these ways. And
Mm.
the team that found me was really much focused on languages. It was an extremely international team where you had to have people who know various languages, who know who have technical skills and communication skills. And that's a unique combination that I actually had, right? Because
Mm.
because the team was analyzing search results and working with engineering, like advising like how to change algorithms so it works well for like Russian and Arabic and Italian and English, etc. Because a lot of the engineers in like Silicon Valley, they just spoke English, really. So they relied on us to kind of provide some guidance.
So this is basically the core of what Google does, is search. And so you join this team and they're looking at languages. And as we know, not only is it about translating the language directly, but actually understanding the nuance of what you mean and how you say something that translates into search. So tell us a little bit about your first job and even the interview process and how that transpired. And then where were you based?
So I so the job was in Ireland, and at the time I didn't even know much about the country. I wasn't sure if it's part of UK or if they speak Irelandese language or something like that. But it turns out that's where they have their European headquarters, and I actually fell in love with the country. I still miss it. I have so many great memories there, and yeah, it's a great place to be. Honestly, it's a great place to work, especially to start a career. And it's extremely international. There were people from like 100 different countries in one building, I think at the time, or maybe two buildings. And on our floor, there were people, speaking all these languages at the same time. It was really a wonderful experience.
Well, there's something also really amazing of you come from this like very unique place, and then you're with this in this really international, basically like a campus. And I think there's something really powerful about the culture of that. It draws you in, it makes you feel comfortable, it makes you feel like you belong, and also that your voice matters no matter where you're from. And that's something that I think we probably have both really experienced during our time at Google. And so can you just, so you were there, you were working on search and languages, and so then what happened? So what was the trajectory of your career, let's say from there, maybe until you joined Google X in California?
Yeah, let me try to squeeze it in. So there was 7 years. I'll squeeze in 7 years in as little as I can. So I think the career started really well. I was actually getting quite a few awards, and that was really shocking, because before that I thought I shouldn't even apply to like less normal, statistically average companies abroad. But at Google, I started getting a lot of these awards. It was really like extremely, genuinely surprising. Genuinely surprising.
Why do you think it was happening? What was it that you hadn't seen in yourself?
I think it's a great question. I think it's the culture. It's the work culture. Again, I think in Kyrgyzstan, there are some really amazing companies with amazing culture. But some of the projects I was a part of, the culture was very unproductive. Like I would be screamed at, like yelled at for not doing things, which they didn't actually tell me. They forgot to tell me to do. That was my perspective. Or I was just asked to like hack things and do like unethical things. So it's just, again, maybe I was just unlucky with the employers I had in Kyrgyzstan, I think. But again, I think part of it is just like having good culture and good people who are ambitious, smart, ethical, kind, supportive, right? It's just super important. Again, I think any company can have this culture. I don't think Google. We're trying to have this culture as a new company now, so there's no monopoly on that. But I think culture is a big deal. Of course, people themselves, but culture is a big part of that. And I think if you create great culture, it helps people like utilize their potential. And that's what was been happening. I'm sure it wasn't happening only for me, but just people around. It's just for me, the delta was huge. That the what I was doing before and I was doing after, like fixing printers and stuff, and was doing after. It was just the delta was so big, and that's what's happening, I'm sure, around the world. And I hope locally there will be conditions to help people realize their potential. But sometimes it takes too much time for countries to build that up. So sometimes it's faster for people to move abroad and have a lot of impact from abroad. And I think I had 100 times more impact on my country from abroad than I would have had if I stayed in Kyrgyzstan, which I think is a very important topic actually for immigration for both sides.
And were you the only person from Kyrgyzstan at Google at the time? I'm pretty sure you were, right? For a long time.
The only known person still, and I've been saying maybe I'm the first, and then now there are so many media. Again, there's so many articles about me saying probably first or first. So nobody claimed it. So it's never possible to know because Google doesn't actually ask you like all of your history. So we'll never know. But first known person for sure, and first known person who grew up in Central Asia, like went to college and joined Google. And I was definitely like this extrovert who was very public about it, and I was trying to kind of bridge these two worlds, the world of Google and the world of Central Asia, by starting many, many more projects like this. So from very small projects like translating like a Happy New Year, it grew into huge projects like installing Google servers in those countries, integrating with mobile operators, launching Google Street View, which is this feature where you can see the streets on Google Maps. That was a huge project. Google Translate was a huge project. where now people could start translating from Kyrgyz or Kazakh, Uzbek into English and all these languages and back. So these are the projects that actually a lot of them I contributed to in my spare time, like evenings and weekends, or 20%. And again, that's where I felt huge impact outside of my regular thing. Right? It's one of those things like an Italian language. You don't actually plan it to make a big impact, but that's actually what makes an impact, is this side hustle.
Yeah, the stuff that's like not really remembered in the grand scheme of things. So just to fast forward,
Yep.
so this happens, and then you joined eventually the emerging markets team at Google, and tell us a little bit about that, and then moving to Google X.
So yes, I joined. People recommended me. There was a role focused on Central Asia, which was a business role, and I basically jumped from engineering to business because there was a huge opportunity to work on Megan Smith's team. She was a vice president at Google at the time. I think she's an amazing person. She helped me a lot, and
then she was
that's where I joined you.
And she was also the first CTO of the Obama, first ever US CTO, and she worked with Obama.
Yes, I mean, she might have been the second, but she was definitely the CTO with Obama. And yes, I mean, it was an amazing team, and it was a big jump for me to go to business. I wasn't sure about that. That was completely not the plan. But the amazing part that I was now the only person focused on Central Asia, so I could start a lot of projects.
Right? She cared about
the whole world. A lot. Yes, yeah. She's been to Afghanistan and she helped, I'm sure, a ton there. I know that she has a ton of projects in that region, in Pakistan as well. So so I joined that team. That's where I met you, and I spent not too long there. There was a big reorganization, and Megan herself decided to move on, and I started looking for another thing. And I wanted to move to US because I visited the US multiple times at the time. Silicon Valley and San Francisco. I really loved a lot about it, and I wanted to move there. And that's when I started looking for jobs around the world, but mainly in the US. And the problem at the time was, again, my career was so hectic. I had this operational experience, analytical experience, engineering, product management, and business development. But so when I started applying for jobs, I could apply for all kinds of jobs and be okay, but I was not good enough for any like specialized job. So I got rejections at pretty much all the teams. I was getting rejections at all the teams, and it was very depressing, to be honest. I thought I kind of failed my opportunities at Google in a way, and the opportunities that I was getting were really very, very far from what I was planning.
You were down. I remember that actually.
Yeah, and that's when I talked to you. I think we were both together, in Silicon Valley in the headquarters in Mountain View, and you basically recommended me to to apply to Google X. And Google X is this Google's moonshot division, which works at like self-driving cars and balloon internet and drone delivery and robots and all kinds of cool stuff, like Google Glass. And it was, famous for being hard to get in. And I basically told you that I'm very thankful for help, offering me to introduce to them and for believing that I can do it. But I said I think I will waste their time. So I didn't want to talk to them because I thought I will waste their time, literally. But you really pulled me out of that depression, and you really, I think, you told me that I should really try, and you tricked me by saying at least maybe they'll have a job for you in the future, and maybe it's could be a good start of a relationship. And I met Mauro, who was basically who was leading a big chunk of like a business side at Project Loon. And Project Loon is this project that aims to provide affordable internet in rural areas in emerging markets using high altitude balloons. And
I mean,
definitely
it's
a crazy project.
amazing. It's like probably one
Yeah,
of the
definitely.
coolest ideas, and the like you couldn't make it up, right?
Yeah, it's a wonderful idea because it involves extremely difficult technology, but it also like
Yeah.
child wonder of balloons. Again, I still don't know why we're so fascinated with balloons as
Yeah, it's
children
true.
and as adults. But also it addresses like a huge problems of connectivity and education in emerging markets, especially in rural areas, the ones which are always which get underinvested.
But I wonder also if what you brought was a sense of wonder and openness that we lack when we work a long time in a big company and a corporate environment. And because of the kinds of roles that you had done and these like awesome people that you had worked with, you've been able to stay true to that. And I did want to come back to what you said in the beginning, is not always trying to follow that path, because that's something that I feel that we've both been quite lucky to do, is we've just kind of gone with what felt right in our hearts and like stumbled along the way. But I was reflecting actually in starting these open-ended conversations. The first project I had through Megan Smith's team was helping with the first business plan for the self-driving car, like,
Oh
so
wow.
many years ago. And that was, you just did it because it was there and it was this time of opportunity. And I think that if you were able to retain that, and maybe it was because you stayed connected to where you're from and that you saw the importance and the power of technology beyond just the day-to-day job, and that's probably what you brought to the team. So, but anyway, so I'm going to move forward, because so if you can say a little bit about your experience at Google X and why that incredible 4 years at the cutting edge of, like you and I both know, everybody, it's the most awesome part, the best thing, on the outside, it's amazing, and you enjoyed it immensely. And so what motivated you then to say, actually, now I want to leave and start my own project outside of Google?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I mean, first of all, one thing I learned about Google X, and I hope everyone learns this, is uh, you can be more ambitious, you can set bigger goals, and that will attract amazing people, and everything is achievable. Like just seeing these balloons launched, and like with my own eyes, I just saw people who worked on it. They were just working on software before. They learned things on the fly. Like I asked most people, like 99% of the team did not have experience with balloons before. They had completely different experience, but they just loved the mission. They were like smart people, great culture, and they managed to accomplish huge things. Now Loon is finally commercial in Kenya, which is amazing.
Nice.
So I think that I learned that a lot of it is really psychological, right? You just decide to do bigger things if it really matters, right? And
To explain that, like, and to unpack it, so basically when you were working, for example, on Project Loon, which you can talk about, like, you're working with the engineers who made the balloon and the people who are thinking about the navigation and the countries and thinking about which countries need internet. So could you say just like very briefly, like kind of the network of people that you had to work with to make something like that happen, and how you were the point person kind of connecting all of these different pieces to drive something forward?
yeah, so I think what's a couple of things. The one I want to mention about the diversity, I think Loon is a great example of bringing people with diverse backgrounds, which is I think what is open-ended about, because it brought people from fashion. There was a girl, her name is Pam. She was from fashion industry with experience in like um, in materials, and she became the lead, I think the lead for a lot of the operations of like making the balloons, which is again she never imagined she will work on it.
Mm-hmm.
We had people from military. There were people. They were recovering balloons. There were people like who were pilots who were working with like air traffic control. Um, there was sculptors at X, and just the range of people was so wide. It was amazing, and I think people were like feeding off each other's like ideas and energy like that. And in terms of people I worked with, I think what was amazing is before Loon, I worked with a lot of people in emerging markets. I met people like you, um, who has like a lot of knowledge and passion about countries like Pakistan, and we also meeting people from like South Africa and Indonesia and Brazil and Peru and things like that. That was really amazing before Loon, and I think Loon for me was a lot about meeting people with diverse backgrounds like art, science, engineering, politics, military, etc.
Super interesting. And so it sounds like also you were able to build a sense of confidence in that process, because I know you said, oh, there's a massive safety net, but like it's a really big deal to start your own project with the world's smartest engineers and computer scientists and say, I'm going to lead something. So it's amazing that you could do that, start it, kick it off, and then say, I realize how incredible these resources are, but actually I want to take all this learning and the sense of self, like you knew you could do it. Of course you had a safety net, but like that's not an easy thing to start and to kick off. And so what was the impetus for saying, okay, this is what I want to do next, and I'm going to go and do it?
I realized like I'm not sure if I'm spending my time well doing this. I'm sure there are people who are much more passionate about it and much more well suited. And so I kind of decided to kind of start to move away from it. And I decided to go back to things I was always passionate about, because I have so many interests. They keep changing, but I realized something I was always passionate about is teaching. Like that was my first dream as a kid, to become a math teacher. And then I wanted to teach when I was in college. I decided to go back and teach in my university. And education is always something I thought always like the biggest thing that can impact the person. Okay, that's my view at least. And that's why I decided to go back and to kind of more education related theme, and decided to try out my own startup. Is something I've been thinking about for a long time.
And so when did you start, and can you tell us a bit about Outtalent and what you guys do?
Okay, sure. So I started legally a year ago. Realistically, I started like 1.5 years ago, started playing around with different ideas and different approaches. I had like, so basically I analyzed my strengths, my passions, and what the world needs, where the market is, and decided to focus like to work on two ideas. And one of them was Outtalent, and that one is just something I realized I just have such a unique position to do that others are not doing. What Outtalent is I think, yeah, so we find amazing engineers in emerging markets. Some of them, they know they're great. Some of them, they are like me. They are like not sure if they can do big things. So we basically, it's like a mentorship program where we work with them for 3 months, and we help them understand what the processes are like, what the market is like, and help them prepare. And a lot of it is building a community and building a great culture where people help each other, and they motivate each other, they learn from each other within that group. And we also have this unique business like new business model where people pay only if they get a job in a desired company, which is very hard to achieve for us, but it forces us to provide an amazing product. So people basically, when they join Outtalent, they write a list of like dream companies, right? I don't know, usually like Google, Facebook, Amazon, et cetera, and we try to make sure they get there. Our goal is we help them infinitely now. Like now they are part of a community, and we really aim for this to become a community. And now that they are part of a community, we just want to help them for the rest of their careers, because these are people we chose not just for their technical skills, but for their values as well. Because we're almost like a company in this way, where we are helping. We are looking for people who will help others as well, because we don't have much time, and one of the ideas is you help people who will help other people.
Oh, that's really powerful. And so you set this up because you and I have talked about this, is like making impact and not for profit versus for profit. So how did you guys decide to set up a for profit? And do you feel confident this was the right way of doing it? And can you explain a little bit about your thinking there? Because I think it's a really important decision that you make.
Yeah. So in my mind, I'm both like a communist and a capitalist. In my mind, I'm like
Like
very much,
Kyrgyzstan.
yeah. I mean, I was born in a communist country, so I feel like I got a lot of benefits from Soviet Union, and a lot of bad things I already said about it. But also, like it empowered a lot of women. Like my grandma got education. She almost kind of got forced by government to get education because otherwise, oftentimes, women are looked at as people who just take care of the housework in Kyrgyzstan. So I feel like we gain a lot from the educational system that we had, and a lot of the benefits uh, from one type of system. But on the other hand, like I think capitalism is one of the best systems that humanity invented. Has its huge drawbacks and needs to be improved, but still. And I don't know when, but at some point, I basically decided that the best way to help somebody, like a country, is to do business with them. And I already had that when I was doing work in emerging markets. And I think it's Google's philosophy. A lot of it is doing business instead of doing charity. Like I think that's more
Mhm.
like the founder's philosophy. I think like they feel like they can do more. Like launching Google Translate, I think does more for Kyrgyzstan, or launching Google Street View than giving money to any local charity probably. Because there's so many companies that can give money, but when you launch a product, I think it's a whole different story. Or when you do a partnership, whole different story. So I feel like doing business is a much better way to actually have social impact. Oftentimes, again, it depends on the type of a problem you're looking for. If you're helping people like vaccinations, I think if you're helping kids with vaccinations or like vitamin A deficiency in Africa, I don't know if you can make a good business out of it. But for a lot of problems, you can do both, and that's a great way to grow fast, to attract people, and to make sure you're disciplined. Because the problem is, I think if you're doing something nonprofit, it may be hard to be very disciplined. And I think that's for me, like this business and our business model creates a kind of forces a lot of
Mhm.
discipline. If we don't help them, people get jobs at top companies, we're not gonna survive basically, right? And our only way of survival is to actually make sure it happens. And that's what I love about doing business. Actually, it really forces me to be better.
Yeah, I think that's really amazing. And equally amazing is the fact that you can do that and bring your own values to the table. And I think this is something that, you talked a bit about culture and talking about values. You are always a naturally empathetic person. You bring people together. I think that's one of the very big reasons you've always done well is people are drawn to you, they trust you because you come from a very sincere place in whatever work you do. So I mean, we talk a lot about this with technology, right? And I wonder how much you think about that as you're mentoring these students, is you're sending them off into some of the world's most important technology companies with this massive range of power and impact on the world. How much do you guys talk about that as they go in? Is this idea of your own personal values and bringing that to the workplace? And equally, we know that eventually translates into technology and how it is built and created and manifests in the world.
Can you clarify the question? So the question is,
The question
like
is
what?
like,
Yeah.
firstly, with the people that you're mentoring, how much you talk about values, their own values, what they're bringing to the table, and equally, how much do you think that translates as personal values? How do they translate into your work when you're working in technology or at a technology company? And can you talk a little bit about that? And if you're thinking about it within your own organization?
Oh yeah, I think a lot about values. I mean, my friends make fun of me a lot. I try to identify people's values based on their behavior because I think that's
Mm-hmm.
the best way. Because if you say your value is integrity, but then you exaggerate a lie, then that's not your value. Um, so we actually have written down values. We have 4 primary values and I think 10 or 12 secondary values. It's always a work in progress. But our values are uh, rationality, ambitiousness, altruism, and integrity. And so these are like the primary drivers. And we basically, when we find people for our program, that's what we're looking for as well. And I think the big one there is altruism. Um, we might rename it potentially, but it's basically just enjoying helping other people and being open to do that, to doing that. And that's something I warn people that, hey, like, do you want to help other people actually get jobs? And because it's an important part is once they join Outtalent, they help each other a lot. And every week they basically tell who helped them the most. And I think that's where we're improving a lot. It's just figuring out what's a good culture for collaboration. And that's something we're trying to see in advance. Like probably half or more than half of people at Outtalent, they taught or mentored before. Like half of them, I think, taught a course. And that's
Nice.
something which shows that, hey, people want to give back. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what will create a lot of success stories in the future, because once they become really big, they will, I'm sure, have a huge impact. One thing, yeah, one question we ask is like, what would you do if money wasn't an issue? Like if you won $100 billion, right? That question talks a lot about people's values, right? And that question I think is very interesting in many ways. But that's one of the things we want to learn about people. I mean, rationality is just something that the processes
100
that we try
billion?
to
Did you
implement.
say 100 billion? Sorry.
I
Just
say 100 billion because it's it's theoretically possible because there's like Jeff Bezos and all these people now
and what
with
would
more
you
money.
do?
I mean, definitely our talent will be one of them. In addition to that, critical thinking, I think, is extremely important. If we all had great critical thinking skills, we would have great democracies. We would address climate change, and I think we would be more empathetic and helpful to each other. Because, for example, if you don't have critical thinking skills, you have racism as one of the many things, right? And almost all problems I see as critical thinking problems. If people were thinking straight, they wouldn't do a lot of stupid things that we do. I mean, I think so. That's one of the things I feel like people don't realize how important it is,
Mm.
and that's another thing I would work on. I mean, climate change, I think, is an urgent problem. We really need to do something about it. I think, is coming. It's going to come earlier than most people think because it's an exponential growth. Like AI now helps build AI in the future, right? So the faster so it's just exponential, and we need to make sure it's safe, and ideally the power will be distributed. And that's a huge one. That probably is not going to happen because whoever gets AI will have incredible amount of power. Like, how do you deal with that? Like even now, there's a huge income disparity, right? It's gonna get more, whether we want it or not. But I think we need to start talking about this question, and that is an enormously big question. So I feel like these four areas are the ones I would focus on.
Super interesting. Yeah, I know. I mean, this is something that it's one of the motivations behind thinking of a platform like Open-Ended is the idea of as we go into the future, particularly with AI driving how we live and behave and learn and communicate, if it is fundamentally biased or loaded away from a vast majority of people and defined by a small minority, what does that mean for fairness going forward? Particularly, as you said, it's going to have this exponential impact. And so it is an incredibly important time for people to be leaning into a great way to spend your money. Your money is gone. Your money was gone on point number 2, 100 billion out the
Yeah,
door. And so,
yeah,
okay, so for that, Tilek, so this is, we talk a lot about this on Open-Ended, this idea of, what would you do? What would you do next? And I think you've laid it out. You're working on your dream, right? That is your dream for the future, is Outtalent. And obviously, we haven't talked about COVID and the pandemic and the lockdown, but you can't be successful, I think, in your professional and personal life without having support. And so I think it's really important to think about what you're doing is there is mentorship, but mentorship means you're bringing yourself to support these people. And if you start to automate these processes, how do you do it in a way that's actually supporting people beyond just, here's your job, start and you'll be fine? Because we actually know that that's not the case. Life isn't easy, work isn't easy. Of course, we're in this shared global pressure cooker right now, but equally any job is incredible to get, but are you strong enough to sustain it, to sustain the pressure, the competitiveness, and to know that people have your back? And these are all things that you're thinking about. It's not just get the job. You have this network of people that are looking out for each other. You're in a foreign country. You're starting from scratch. These are things that I think are really important to keep considering for people also maybe listening to you speaking about your work.
Oh yeah, definitely, for sure. I mean, I will note a couple of things, and I think the main thing is we try to help people again from then onwards. Like, it's not that they graduated, got a job, and it's gone. Some people, they're worried after they get a job. They have like imposter syndrome. Like, can I actually make it? And some people don't have friends in a new city, so we try to make sure like they have friends to talk to. I mean, I think you met some. I connected you to somebody who was moving to London, so that's. There are a lot of, I think once we actually met somebody in the airport even. So we have a lot of these small bits which are actually like valuable, because I remember when somebody met me in the airport when I was moving to US, it just felt completely different. When you're
That's so
moving
nice.
to a new
Yeah.
country and there's somebody waiting for you, I think that is like a small thing in a way, but it's also a big thing. And we want our town to do more things like that, where you have this global community of people who want to help each other and achieve big goals together. Coming back to like Google X and stuff, I feel like you can make a huge difference just by saying a few words or like asking a question. You don't need sometimes to build a huge technological thing to do what's most important. Sometimes you can ask a question, right? For example, somebody wants to move abroad, you ask why, right? And that question may lead a person in a completely different trajectory, right? Instead of like, paying for their ticket or something like that. So
oh my gosh,
I'm really big
so
believer of this
powerful.
small like soft ways to change things.
And also creating the space for somebody to ask the why.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a last question just to wrap up. Is I know you are in your work, you're dealing with the issues of immigration. It's not just limited to one country. And I did want to know if you see ways forward to, especially in terms of, clearly like opening up the world is allowing, people that you're working with to have these incredible opportunities that they might not have otherwise. Where do you see, maybe very briefly, things going with remote working? Do you think there's going to be more opportunities for the people that you're supporting to get the roles that they want? And how do you see shifts in immigration shaping opportunities for people like us, for example, in the future as they're looking to start their careers?
Yeah, I think it's a huge question. One of our challenges during fundraising was that a lot of most Silicon Valley investors think remote is the future. And I think a lot of the future will be remote. And it's wonderful because people get used to working internationally, right? It's going to be much easier to start a job from anywhere in the world. There's much more trust. You trust people with data, with confidential information. So I think it's increasing trust around the world. It's huge. And yeah, trusting that you will do what's needed without manager looking at you physically, right? Being in the same room. So I think the trust is increasing around the world. I mean, COVID is forcing it, and the best companies will win, I'm sure. But I don't want to kind of baby to be thrown out with the bathwater. Like, immigration is super important for building relationships, exchanging culture. It changed me as a person drastically, and I feel like I brought a lot of diversity and like very different opinion with my background to the groups I was part of. So I feel like immigration is super important, and countries are artificial concepts, right? Let's not forget about that, right? Like, ethnicities are also quite artificial. There's no strict border between two ethnicities, or even though there are strict borders between countries. So in reality, we all the same. people. So in that sense, I think like immigration is super important, and we all like it's all home for us. And I'm very optimistic. I mean, rational countries like Canada, a lot of the EU, they are accepting immigrants a lot, and it's just growing actually, for especially high skill immigration. It's just growing in Canada and like European Union. Yes, there are some setbacks like US and the UK with immigration. I'm sure there will be some setbacks, but I think overall the trend will be positive. I think we'll speed up that trend a little bit by having a lot of success stories of somebody's talent being much better utilized, having a lot more cross-cultural exchange and success stories on both sides, the kind of sending country and the receiving country. Right? I think that's there will be many more success stories like that. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, like what you shared in terms of what you were able to give back to your own country based on your own experiences and are continuing to do because you got that. And also, you and Mai would probably have never met and spend time in random countries and offices and experienced working together. And I think that if we lose that, we all know that we lose a lot of what it means to build relationships and trust and long-term connections to people.
Yeah,
and so
I mean, the way you could see the remote and immigration is like immigration is there and always be there. I mean, it's just such a strong force. I mean, even from North Korea, like even in the worst, most difficult place, there's still a lot of immigration, like out of it, of course. It's just a super strong force, and the good thing is remote will create like a step, like another step in that ladder, like an easier step, and that's what will, I think, connect the world much better.
Okay, well, on that note, thank you, Tilek, for joining us. It means a lot. You're really busy, and to share your time and your thoughts and to open up. It was, for me personally, very moving to go through your journey and to think about all of the things that you've done and accomplished and how much you've traveled, I suppose, along the way. So thank you for sharing that with us, and we will be in touch with you with next steps.
Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate the invite.